Hello, I'm Kel Fox.
And I'm Sarah Collin.
We're starting our brand new podcast talking about yoga, principles of yoga, and really expanding that into all sorts of life philosophy that goes here at High Aspirations. Today we wanted to start with talking about the principles of a yoga practice.
There's so much to say about all these things. So that was the purpose of starting this podcast. And principles of yoga practice really has come about as a good starting point, specifically because I hear so often that the word yoga does conjure up for some people fears of coming to a class with sort of remnants of, they might have been to a class years ago where they had a bad experience or they had an injury. So I thought this was a good place to start to talk about, well, what does constitute safety in a yoga class?
And what makes it something that becomes a lifelong practice that you can use at all times? Like so often you hear people saying, oh, well, I can't get back into that because I've injured myself. I was at a dance event last night and this lady came up saying, oh, well, I can't dance anymore because I broke my knee. And that was over a year ago. And I'm like, well, you know, if your intention is never to dance again, fine. But, you know, I mean, yoga sort of springs to mind always as something that she could use as a tool. But even to the point where people sort of see yoga as the end activity, you know, people get put off by injury and they go, well, I can't do it this week because I'm injured.
They do.
Or I can't do it in 6 months' time. You know?
Yeah, and they do that, and they often sort of say, oh, well, I can't come this week because of this, that, or the other. And yet, unfortunately, it seems to have, with the rise and increase of the popularity of yoga, it seems that yoga's lost the meaning. The meaning has been lost of what yoga really is, because yoga is so much more than a physical yoga class.
Yeah.
Yoga is about the contact with the other people that you have in that class. So if you weren't able to fully participate, then wouldn't it still be nice to feel that you could go along to the class and still catch up with everyone and enjoy the relaxation and be in the space?
Or if it's a self practice, like my yoga is very much a self practice that I do in my home. It's something like, even if I feel like physically I'm not going to be capable of doing what perhaps I'd set out to do or had been my schedule, you still show up on the mat, you know, you still get there. And even if all you do is just lie on the floor and roll around a little bit, it's that sort of engagement with that process of, well, why do I not feel like doing a set asana or sequence today, you know? But still show up and still engage with the body,
but still show up. I think I think that's vital, the commitment to a practice, and yoga is so much more, as I said, than just the physical practice. So it's like showing up to that appointment with yourself for some self-inquiry, you know. Even if you didn't feel like physically moving, well, you could still show up to do some deeper inquiry about, well, how am I actually feeling? How's my heart feeling today? You know, what's my state of mind today? What might be going on here?
Yeah. And it could be that there's something else that is making you feel like you don't want to do a certain movement that needs to be honored. And that might be a physical issue. It might be that the reason you're feeling like you just don't want to do that particular position is because there is a subtle physical block going on that something else might release. Or it could be that there's an emotional sort of aversion to that, which can be examined, but not if you don't show up. So I think, you know, safety is vital.
Not if you don't show up, no.
But it shouldn't be used as an excuse to not go. Yeah.
No, exactly. And I started this year with a bit of a disclaimer, which I haven't done before, but I sort of started the year saying exactly that to people, that some days you don't feel like coming and you text me and say, sorry, going home, a bit tired. But, you know, have a think about that and challenge yourself to show up anyway and come into the space. And it might be that once you get there, you do a little bit of an activation and you start to feel a bit better and you do a bit of stretching, and then you do move past the block, and then you learn something more about yourself, sort of like the opportunity to discover something that could help you down the track. You know, these are tools for life, these tools. So, but alternatively, that person could also have turned up and said, oh, I'm really not feeling well, but I'm just going to put my mat over on the side so I'm not, you know, in the middle of the room, and I'm just going to lie here and I'm going to do a relaxation, or I'm going to listen to you and see what it feels like to do a visualization of the practice lying down. That's powerful.
Yeah, possibly even more sometimes than doing the physical movement. think is, we know now that that is a practice engaged in by elite athletes, because when you visualize, you're not being hindered by any physical circumstances. So you can visualize yourself doing that perfectly. And the brain doesn't know that you're not actually doing it. So in terms of creating those mental pathways for that process, it's the same as if you were to do it in real life, except possibly better, because I can't execute a perfect downward dog in real life. My hamstrings are too short, and heels are too tight, and whatever else. And that varies depending on the time of the day and what I've been doing. But I can certainly visualize doing one. So that has an impact that is much deeper.
And hence, much deeper. And hence then you get the full benefits of being able to do that practice in that way.
I think it's important to do the physical practice too, because that will bring things like when you go through that process of visualization, you may not find the physical blocks or issues that are going on, but because it's sort of all perfect. It's just a different way of approaching. I think they're both important. You need to engage with both.
I think they're both important, and it's giving options. It's giving options for those times when you might physically not be able to do it. So it's about then, well, what are my alternatives? There's always alternatives.
Yeah. But I think showing up is sort of fundamental, and it's an exercise in being sort of, it's discipline to some extent, but it's also gentleness. It's like showing up to anything, really. It's like going to the gym. I might not feel like going to the gym, and I'm like, I just can't do it today. And then I think I just go and I do halfway. And then suddenly it's easy and it's accessible. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. And then when I get there, most of the time I will raise to the level that I would normally perform at. But some days I don't, and it still feels better to have gone and done something rather than just, no, I don't feel like I'm staying home. And quite often
go today. And then that leads on to another.
Well, it becomes hard to stick to a routine if routine is what you need. And I think it's important also to sort of honor yourself as well. If there's a reason why you're not going that is like legitimate, like you're like, I'm not going to yoga today because I actually have a cold and I'm sneezing and snuffling everywhere. Like it's, don't go. Honor that too. There's going to be times when the correct choice is to not go. But I think it's always worth kind of questioning, especially if it's just that feeling of, I'm a bit tired. I don't feel like going to yoga, or I don't feel like going to my yoga mat in my spare room and lying on it. It's like, can I still do it? Can I still just go and show up? Especially if it's a home practice, like you can sneeze all over your own yoga mat. So so I think the other way of committing to it, even if you know that, for, whatever reason, whether it is physically, your car broke down, or you have a cold or some sort of, virus that you don't want to spread around, is you can still make the commitment to show up to that class, but remotely. So you could still go, okay, I have this hour that I would normally be at yoga. I can't make it because, whatever reason, but I'm still going to spend that time in reflection, or, on the lounge room floor doing some gentle stretching or something. There is power in that too.
There's a lot of power in that. And that's the commitment to taking yoga to the next level, other than it's a class I go to when I can fit it in and I feel good when I leave. That's about as far as it goes. Because for some people that's sort of what happens.
Well, it's just another activity, and then it becomes difficult to maintain that for a long period of time. I think, like, certainly some people perhaps are able to commit to a routine that is just becomes this sort of part of their life forever, but I think for a lot of people that becomes mundane and too easy to sort of move out of your life if you find something else that becomes more engaging, or or suddenly something happens and you don't have time, like you perceive that you don't have time. So
absolutely. So it sort of is, yoga really is, it's a way of life. It's a way, it's an ancient science that supports quality of life and living a more enriched life. So to think of it in a bigger context of showing up for a physical movement class, because it is so much more than that.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I suppose it's sharing those deeper aspects within a class, so that people get a sense of, this isn't just something I turn up to once a week. The effects of this overflow into other parts of my life, and I can take snippets of this and start incorporating them in other ways.
And I think if you're not getting that encouragement to be
Valuable.
doing that in your class, then consider a different one. A different teacher perhaps would speak to you more on that level. Because I think there are many teachers and classes out there who perhaps are great on a physical level, but don't ever really push that other idea of, how else can this be applied to your life? So if the philosophy isn't there, then go looking for it. Because that will make all the difference to the longevity of your practice. Like, you can hear all about the benefits of yoga and go, okay, it sounds like this is something I need. I'm going to show up to my closest yoga class, and it may be that, it's just not sustainable for you. Because
definitely,
the philosophy of that class might not be right. That comes back
look
into
again.
safety as well.
Look again.
Yeah,
it does. And be prepared to stand in your own integrity, I suppose. When you're in a class, as to what you're looking for. So if you don't want someone to come up and touch you or push you into shape, then feel free that you're allowed to say, sorry, but you haven't got permission to touch me. That sort of thing is another aspect, because there's still quite a bit of that going on, I think, where it's about the look of the pose. Whereas if you come to any of the classes I teach, I very rarely would make any adjustments other than if I thought it would be helpful for you to just move in a different way, but I'd have permission to do that before I came into your space, and I most certainly wouldn't be encouraging you to look a certain way.
No.
It's more about a self-inquiry into how does this feel for me? If I was to move my foot this way, how does that feel? Or would it be better this way? So everyone in, for example, the tree would look a bit different. Honouring their own body, their own movement range, how they feel on that day, and what it's doing for them at other levels.
Yes. And I think also, there's adjusting because you haven't got an alignment correct, which may be a safety issue. And then, usually that can be verbally adjusted, but sometimes it does help to have somebody just go, actually, this is how it should feel. And that is, assuming once again that no one will touch you if you're not comfortable with that, and they will verbally adjust you first. But, there should never be any sort of requirement to push deeper into a pose if you're already at a point where you're comfortable. And quite often, I think in the yoga that Sarah and I practice especially, it's not always about going as far as you can in a pose. Even if you can physically go further, maybe you can get your hands flat on the floor while bending over in a forward bend, or you can put your palms under your feet, in your peace posture, but you don't have to. And sometimes there's benefit in practicing that with a smaller range of motion than what you can physically comfortably do. The energetic effects are often deeper.
They're often deeper, and there's often more potency in that, because quite often, if you're straining to get into a pose, then quite often that's where you might inadvertently lock a joint. And the minute you lock a joint, well, then you're going to block any energetic flow. So then you're not going to get the same benefit. So it's very easy to do that if you start pushing yourself into the sort of upper ranges of a particular posture because you think it looks better.
Or you think you have to go as far as you can. I think certainly I thought like that for a long time, which was that, you need to reach as far as possible in seated forward bend, because otherwise you're not getting the stretch, which is the whole point, right? And it isn't at all. So how does it feel to sort of stretch your hamstrings at a point where they're comfortable, if that's a possibility?
Yes, yeah.
Because I know lots of people struggle.
And then we often forget to breathe.
If you're forcing something.
So if we can reach a point that's comfortable, and then start to breathe into it, that makes a big difference. Starting to, use your breath and explore that, because that'll take you in to another level.
I was working with a practice the other day where the instruction was that it was a restorative kind of twist, upper body twist, spinal twist. And the instruction was, if you've opened your eyes while you're moving that, while you're going into that movement, you've gone too far, which is a very subtle indicator, it's sort of, but whether you have your eyes open or closed in a yoga practice makes a huge difference to where your focus is. And the idea in this was
Yeah.
If in the process, if you start with your eyes closed, if in the process of that twist you have inadvertently opened your eyes, then you've gone too far for what this particular practice is about. I just thought that was an interesting thing to play with.
Yeah. Interesting to explore. Because the other thing in a class is, and it creeps in, and it doesn't matter how often you can say it, there is a competition that sort of is inherent in human beings, because they'll sort of notice what's going on around them, and they will want to do something similar. So it's quite challenging to be working at your own pace or modifying certain poses in amongst a class of people that are striving.
Yeah.
It takes quite a bit of courage, I think, to come out when you feel you've finished, when everyone else might be staying in there a bit longer.
Yeah.
Or to come out and go in again, and to sort of make it yours, to sort of explore it. That's what I'm hoping to encourage more in my classes, that people can explore, go come in and out a couple of times and see what that feels like. Have a break in between, try the other side. We don't all have to be looking like we're all doing the same thing at the same time.
No, it's not a sequence dance performance. I suppose the question then that I would ask is, what if when you're in a pose, you're like, oh, I want to come out of it now. How do you know sometimes if that's just discomfort sort of telling you to back away because you're not prepared to look at it? Or how do you know if you actually do really need to come out? Like, sometimes it's good to stay with that discomfort.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not correct. So how do you know?
Well, that's that inner listening, isn't it? Because your teacher's not going to know for you. They're not in your body. You're in your body. So it's like, okay, we'll come out this time, and then maybe go in again and explore. What would it feel like if I stayed a little bit longer? What would that feel like?
Yeah.
And try it.
So I suppose the benefit of a regular practice is you can choose to vary that, can't you? So sometimes you can just stay in it for longer and go, okay, I'm going to wait, and I'm going to stay for as long as I can, while still being respectful and gentle of your body. That's sort of an underlying principle that must always be in play. But sometimes I think it is, you do back out because you start to feel uncomfortable, and actually that was emotional discomfort because you're moving energy. Exactly. And if you'd stayed with that, it would have flowed through and then been gone, and then you could have relaxed in the pose. So you might not ever get to that final relaxation in a position if you keep backing out just because it starts to feel a little bit uncomfortable. But at the same time, you don't want to.
And I suppose that's a good
make
discussion.
things unpleasant.
No. So I suppose then that's about having the time and the space to answer a question like that within a class, and say, encourage people. Well, what would it feel like? Just stay a little bit longer. The minute you get the first inkling that you want to come out, what would it feel like just to stay just a couple more breaths? But giving people permission to explore that, because is there something coming up? And even that self-questioning, if we can talk to ourselves internally, like, oh, is there something coming up here? And then where do I feel that in my body? Oh, I feel it, I feel it in my belly. So I wonder what this is about. So it's giving people permission and, to explore that and feel safe to do that. There's no right or wrong.
No, So it's just very much
because it will still be there. If it doesn't come out this time, it'll come out next time when you visit it again.
So that's the benefit of a regular practice and continuing to show up. You'll get another chance to have a look at these things if you didn't find it the first time.
Exactly. And more comfortable with feeling, because we just haven't been taught to feel at this subtle level, and we are so distracted by outside influences that I think it's a whole new skill set to be learned again.
I think we're not even taught to feel at a more gross level, really. It's sort of
true.
Our society is very much about carrying on through physical pain or not expressing emotion, and then let alone anything more subtle. So
that's true. Good point. So that's the, like you say, the benefit of showing up and being inquisitive and having that sense of curiosity. And a sense of acceptance, so you're kind to yourself. It's like developing that sense of self-compassion for your practice, because every time you step onto the mat is different. Every time you do a posture or a breath, it's different. You're not the same. You've probably eaten something different, or you've had an extra cup of coffee or no coffee, or there are so many variables.
Yeah.
Someone might have honked their horn at you as you're driving into the car park. Who knows?
Yeah, and that will change how you move into something and how it feels. So.
Which is why it's so nice, in the yoga that we're teaching, is that we do that little activation before we start. So it's an opportunity to sort of shake off and shrug off the journey there, so that you get rid of that sort of external stuff before you then can go and inquire a little deeper.
Sort of like that gets rid of the superficial stuff that doesn't matter. Like if somebody honked their horn at you because they thought you cut them off and you didn't, that's annoying and it jars and it does kind of stick on you a little bit, but it's not part of your greater journey. Like you don't need to keep that. You don't need to deal with it. You just need to get rid of it. And so I think it's important to sort of have a process where you don't have to mentally catalog that stuff. I think it's the great thing about activations is there's no kind of, someone said this at work and that was a bit funny, and someone did this in the drive here and that was a bit odd, and this happened at home yesterday, and you don't have to mentally kind of make a list and go, okay, these are all the things I'm throwing out. It's like, I think just that process of activation, the shaking, the movement, the freedom of it just lets all that fall away without you even having to consciously cognize it.
Lets it fall away.
And then what you bring into your practice then is the stuff that you really want to work on. The things that are deeper.
And the amazing thing, as a human being, the amazing thing that happens is that through the regularity of practice and your intention, it's almost like the body knows what you're about to do. So it's actually already half gone before you start shaking. You know what I mean? It's like once you get into that flow state of knowing what's coming, it's almost half the work's done for you.
And then I think if you
we're pretty amazing, really.
We are, yeah. I think once you sort of get used to that, and it is a regular practice for you, you can let those things fall away before you even go to yoga. You sort of start learning to just let that stuff go. Yeah. And you don't carry it around. You don't carry those feelings with you all day.
Yeah.
Which
it's pretty amazing.
Continues to unveil deeper and deeper levels. Like we're never done. As long as we're here walking around in this physical plane, we're not done. So there's no such thing as being sort of finished with this process.
Not really, no. Not for as long as we're human, living in a world like we living on this earth, where there's so many things to contend with, moment by moment, day by day.
So it's self-inquiry, I suppose.
But showing up is important.
I mean, there's so many principles of a yoga practice once you expand it into a life process by definition. I
think,
I think showing up is probably the first one. Like you can't get to any of the others if you haven't shown up. So you just have to have that commitment to this is what I'm including and make room for it, and then you'll find that it makes room for everything else as well. It starts to just be a part of what you do. Yeah,
and the benefits are too good that you won't want to show up after a while. So you do get to feel that. And then that opportunity to really honour, it's like we've got this physical body that houses our beautiful souls, and there's an obligation to keep this temple, this body temple, as well as you can. So there's that aspect of, let's look after this one body that we've got, because it does an amazing job at renewing itself. It's continually renewing itself. It's supporting you in so many ways, and we take it for granted until something happens. And it's usually once something happens and we lose the ability to walk freely, or we get inflammation or bursitis in a hip or a foot, and suddenly then we realize what we haven't got. But the gratitude wasn't there for what we did have before that happened.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, I think.
It's a very powerful practice.
It is, yes. Yeah. But I think also to be grateful for what you do have at all times. So even if you are injured or, lose some part of what you had previously, you then still need to be able to be grateful for where you are now. So it's not always about kind of restoring the body back to an original state, or sort of maintaining this perfect temple. I think to some extent there's both. Like you have to work on it, but you also have to be content and grateful for what you have. And if that means that currently your arm is in plaster and you tie your shoes with both hands, well, what can you do that you are grateful for? And can you be content in that state of, rather than longing to be back in your state without having the plaster on your arm, if that makes sense? I think there's both sides to that.
Yeah. Sort of like honouring the body temple in the moment, regardless.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be what we would sort of consider from an outward perspective whole. It's the soul is always whole, and
absolutely.
And the body temple is a process rather than a thing. I think that is sort of enables you to experience. Changing. Yeah, it's constantly changing. You're never going to have the same experience from one day to the next. It'll be very subtly different. Some days it'll be vastly different. Going on, and that doesn't mean that it's better or worse or more or less than what you have had at different times or will have in the future. So I think to some extent, an acceptance of your current state, regardless of whether or not it would be considered well by somebody else's definition, is important. And yoga gives you that too.
Absolutely. It gives you that, and that's that cultivating that self-compassion for acceptance of every stage of life, because as we go through life, we're going to have to be accepting of how our body ages. It's not going to stay the same.
No.
We have a lot of societal pressure as to what we supposedly should look like at certain ages, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's the practice of yoga that gives you the insight to value, the body temple as it is in its various stages, just as we value and appreciate nature. Nature is the best reflection of every stage of life, reflected in a part of a forest. Do you know what I mean? You can see sort of the dead, the decaying, the new life springing up.
Yeah. It's definitely a very broad topic, the principles of your yoga practice. But I think, we'll call today was more sort of showing up for that and being available for it and making that commitment. Yeah. It's probably fundamental. And next time we'll talk about another aspect.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much for listening. We'll talk soon. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.